This is my first thought, and I live in Stamford Hill. I live in a very Orthodox community, a very Jewish, and we're now in the midst of voluntary self-isolation, and I have seen this totally ignored in my neighborhood. And I am amazed at this preponderance of Jewish people that are so solipsistic and so non-caring about the rest of the country and the rest of the community. So today I was going to tell you uh, about what Jewish was to me. I I think that people, when they live here and they see the Hasidic community totally self-absorbed and totally interested in their own rituals, which I have no problem with. I have no problem with. But for me, Judaism was a very different thing. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, where we're a very loving, very aggressively hospitable community. And Judaism for me was such a completely different uh, mindset. I'm an atheist, but I'm Jewish. My friend Rosie Keene is a Church of England lady, and she too is Jewish. Because Jewish, where I come from, and what I was taught, is love, is love. We love children so much that we look at, there is no way that a child can do anything wrong, which explains why so many Jewish children grow up to be people with most horrible sense of entitlement, especially the boys, because as far as we're concerned, the air is sweeter if our child, any child, any child breathes it. We don't care what color it is. We don't care whether it's what it looks like. We don't care. We love it. And Jewish people will help children wherever they see it and at any moment. And we have a saying, it's called kvelling, that when you see a child, any child, you glow. You just glow, and that's called kvelling. And we did that all the time. So that's what Judaism is. Judaism is helping other people. We call it a mitzvah. Mitzvah means a gift from God, and it's reaching out to people no matter who they are or where they are if they need help. We have one holiday that everybody knows about. It's Purim. It just ended, where that's the goal. You go out and you help people. You give people money. You give people food. You enhance their lives. But for Jewish people, at least where I come from in the 30s and 40s, this was a way of life. This was something you did every day to make yourself live a good life. That was Judaism to me. And I keep remembering my grandpa on my father's side. He was an Orthodox Jew. He was a kosher butcher. And of course, the joke is that my grandpa choked chickens every morning. But he did choke chickens because that's how they killed them. But he was so good. If he walked down the street and he saw somebody carrying a package, he would carry the package for him. He was a tiny little man. But when you went into his butcher shop, you didn't need money. All you needed to do is be hungry. He sold you meat when you could afford it, but when you couldn't, he gave it to you. Because my grandpa believed, as all Orthodox Jews in the Midwest did, that we feed people. Being human gives you a right, and I believe that, and that is what I am imbued with. So when I am here now, in the midst of this coronavirus fright, because we are all terrified, the one thing I know, and the one thing that I think we all need to do, is stop thinking of ourselves and start thinking of the people around us, because they're lonely and they're hungry for more than food. They're hungry for connection. So I wanted to tell you today just this small little thing about what Jewish in my day was to me. And again, I'll tell you about one more grandpa. My mother's father was a plasterer, and he had no education whatsoever. And he was an atheist like I am, but he was also very Jewish. And as I said, Jewish people love children. And when I was 3 and 4 years old, he would come home from work, and his work was excessive and exhausting because he was plastering walls and for very little pay because my grandpa and grandma on my mother's side starved until my daddy started earning enough money to support them. And he would come home exhausted, barely earning enough to pay for the food that was going to be on the table. And he would sit down, and I would sit on his lap. I was 3, and I would sing to him. And his hair was receding, and he had a little tuft in the front. And I would sit for hours and sing to him while he was trying to read the paper. That's how he learned English. He was Romanian and he was trying to figure out the words in the paper. And this little 3-year-old child would be sitting on his lap singing and combing the little tuft of hair that was on his head. And he loved me so much that when I went to college, my mother drove me to Ann Arbor, which is 40 miles from Toledo, and got me settled in the dormitory. When she came back, she realized that she had forgotten to bring me a pillow. My mother was not very fond of me, and my mother didn't like that she had to drive all the way up there and drag in all my clothes when it should have been my father who was lifting heavy things because my mother was a princess, and my mother did not want to do anything to chip her nail polish. But she did take me up there because no one else was going to do it, and when she came back, my grandpa was living with us then, and she told him that she said that she forgot the pillow. And my grandfather made her turn around and drive that pillow back to me. She never forgave him. But that was how much that my grandpa loved me. Because as I said, we love children. We love people. That's Judaism. It's absolutely a beautiful, giving, loving religion. So is Catholicism. So is Catholicism. But that's my experiences with Judaism. I want to thank you very much for listening to this. I'll have another observation for you tomorrow.